Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and my lovely NBs. We are here live in the FBA Draft here at Las Vegas. My name is Marcus Baylor, and to my right is Ryan Eastman. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent, Marcus. Glad to be here. It's going to be a wonderful night, the first night of many of these players' FBA careers. Magic's in the air right now, and we have a lot of anxious furs waiting to hear where they'll end up.
That is true. They've worked really hard throughout their final years of college or other professional leagues, and are now trying to go ahead and dip their toes in to the FBA. And this is their first big moment for a lot of these players, and it's going to be a great time. And I see a lot of smiling faces, a lot of people dressed up in their fancy suits. It's just going to be a wonderful time.
Yes, and like I said, I think I see our commissioner, Hugo Livingston, heading to the podium now to give his opening address.
Good evening, esteemed guests, hopeful draftees, your families, friends, staff and players, and all who are present this afternoon to the 2022 Furry Basketball Association Draft. I am Hugo Livingston III, the Commissioner of the Furry Basketball Association, and it is my pleasure to be welcoming you all here today. The Furry Basketball Association is an organization that prides itself on loyalty and legacy, on good sportsmanship, and having fun. I wish to impart to all of you, especially the draftees, some words of wisdom and perhaps an anecdote or two before we get started. Many years ago, and half a world apart, I was a young boy living in the wilds of Africa. And let me tell you, life was not very pleasant. First off, hi everyone. It's me, Rookie. Let me just kind of remove the veil for a minute, and I wanted to take a couple minutes to kind of go over tonight's proceedings while the commissioner keeps rambling on and on about the correlation between basketball and growing up in the wilds of the jungle or something. I'm sure it's not important. Once your team is on the clock, either myself or Faded will contact you via Discord. As team staff, you're expected to have a Discord account and be reachable there, but you all already know that. In the first round, each team is going to have 5 minutes to make their selection, and in the second round, each team will only have 3 minutes. Once you make your selection, please inform whichever commissioner has contacted you, again, probably me, at the beginning of your team's time. If a trade is currently being made with the pick that is currently on the clock, the new team is going to have 3 minutes to make their selection once that trade is finalized. However, we caution that you try and get those trades done before your team is on the clock. If we can't reach you, it'll be about 2 or 3 minutes before we reach out to your secondary contact. If neither one of you is able to be contacted by the time your draft selection period ends, we will use your draft priority list. If you failed to submit a draft priority list, or if everyone on your list has been already taken, we will use our best judgment to figure out what your team needs, but it's more likely that given time constraints, we will be probably just selecting the highest available draftee still on the board. There's a couple more things to keep in mind during this broadcast for everyone listening, not just for the team primary contacts, so that you kind of know what's going on. There is going to be a slight delay in the broadcast between what is happening live and whatever one is hearing or seeing on YouTube. Because of this, there might be some instances where we contact you before the stream starts to show you, or excuse me, before the stream shows your time period starting to show that you are on the clock. We'll do our best to let you know that you're on deck, but it's your responsibility to be available once your team hits their draft selection slot. We do allow a little bit of wiggle room in your responses, so long as you respond to our initial message right away, just letting us know that you are here and making that decision actively. We also aren't going to be waiting indefinitely, though. It's supposed to be about a 5-minute window for each pick. And while we hope that you're able, we really hope that you're able to respect that. Again, if you're making any trades this evening, please make sure that you are talking to the involved parties before you're on the clock. This will make things go much more smoothly and ensure the draft doesn't take 12 hours and we all aren't here until 3 a.m. in the morning. Shout out to those of you joining us from across the pond. We're actually might run a little late tonight, but we're going to try to mitigate that, and we do appreciate that you're here with us. If you do have some draft night shenanigans planned, you might want to start making those plans now. Please contact either myself, Faded, or Kingsley to let us know something is going down, and we'll do our best to make it dramatic and, well, shenanigan-like, and all sorts of fun, exciting draft stuff. This helps us to be armed with the information ahead of time so that we can pick the correct graphics and resources to help support your vision and what could be happening. We won't announce these trades until you want us to, but having some lead time for the rest of us to get it ready is always good. Finally, make sure that you are checking the wiki for the most up-to-date information on which draftees are available, and there should be a link to the draft big board already provided in the announcements section.
It's team staff right now, but I can move it.
Team staff right now. So if you want to follow along, you can go ahead and use that link. That's it from me and, a little bit from Faded. So we're going to return you to your regularly scheduled commissioner story already in progress and hopefully almost finished. Good luck and have fun. So I said to him, "That's not my cat, that's your cat." We all had a bit of a laugh, and that was that. Well, excuse me, I got a little bit ahead of myself. I do want to, I do appreciate all of you understanding the emotion behind that story and that it's very personal to me, but in order so that you understand that these nights are special, make this night special for you. I want to wish every one of the draftees good luck here, and looking forward to seeing where everyone goes this evening. Thank you.
Well, after that rousing story, Marcus.
Very great story again from our wonderful commissioner. Glad he gets to tell a different one every year.
Yep, and actually, I think I see him coming back to the stage because he has not announced who is on the clock.
Oh gosh.
Oh, yes, I'm getting too old for this. Right now on the clock is the Alaska Arctics, followed by Oregon being on deck. Thank you.
Well, as we heard there, Alaska Arctics on the clock, and we're going to be hearing their name a lot tonight, I think, between the three first-round picks they've managed to acquire.
Yeah, they've really made a lot of moves. Even made a move like today, actually, having a surprise trade with the Dakota Bikers. But of course, we'll talk about that a little bit later on into the draft. But now let's just talk about the draft pick that they have now, the number 1 overall. The slot saved for what is considered to be the best of the best out of all the players. And of course, when it comes to Alaska, they can really go anywhere with this pick, considering that they don't really have too many players that are on the roster at the moment.
So obviously, I think point guard is settled unless they're making some kind of plans to trade the Weasel, Alessandro Serra. But you have to look at the rumors we've heard going around regarding who they've been targeting. I've heard them targeting a Birdie Williamson combo. We've heard them talking to Tyler Conley out of LVG, which we just saw, Tyler coming out on Twitter saying, he's not returning to LVG. And only 2 teams have made offers to him right now. Oh, sorry, 3 teams have made offers to him right now. And one of them is Alaska. So you look at the players that they may be about to sign, and you wonder if that might be impacting their decision here with the first overall pick.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just since I think that Tyler Conley is the player that they've pretty much offered the most money to so far in free agency when it comes to the Arctics, that they want to try and see if they can probably impress him and not try and deter him away from picking the Arctics, because obviously they really want to go ahead
Hmm.
and start this, I guess, retooling phase with the Blast. So of course they can't do no better. They can't do no wrong with having the pick overall.
Yeah, and looking at the possible targets, I am seeing, in my opinion, because I probably don't want to chase him off, I could definitely see them going after uh, Astrid Victorson, the small forward, maybe trying to bring in a little bit of that flash, a little bit of that scoring that they had back. We
Hmm.
remember forever ago when the Coffee Husky hailed from Alaska. Maybe try and bring a little bit of that uh, flair and scoring onto the team. And obviously, ranked number one. You can't really argue with that either.
Yeah, I think that with the fact that not having conflicting positions as well as being the top overall player really gives you a lot of leeway of being pick overall. I wouldn't be surprised if they go for Victorson here, but I think another player that could be a good opportunity is also Blake Evans being a swing for himself. Having the opportunity to either play the 2 or the 3 is a really uh, big thing, because having variety is very important here, especially in today's FBA. So I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps up and gets picked first overall.
And that's another thing to keep in mind. We have two players, at the top that are, well, I mean, honestly, the big thing, we do not have a center ranked in the top five. The first center we see possibly coming off the board will be Marshall Terega, which with their, and we'll get to them when they get to their eighth pick, which they picked up from Dakota, you start to wonder, okay, is that where they might pick up a center? Because do you pick up a center with the first overall pick, knowing you have the eighth pick as well?
I would say no. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised considering that there isn't a lot of centers that are in the top 24 in general. I believe there's like maybe two or three at most. I would have to say that it, even with that, I would probably be like, let's just go and hold it off. They're not, even though that there's few centers, they're not ranked as high. And of course, we also have to talk about all the big firms that are in free agency as well that they can easily pick off. So I would say hold off until that eighth slot to get that center. But I just think right now, obviously, the best player available would be the best bet. It's the safest bet too, since all of the well, at least the top four, especially, are going to be around that 2 or 3 slot in their respective teams.
Yeah, but I see the pick has been handed in, so we will cut down to the floor and we will get this draft night started with a bang.
For the first pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Alaska Arctics have selected Devin Dukes, a center from Havana, Cuba. Congratulations to you, Devin, on being the first pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Oregon Swashbucklers have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
What?
Well, this is certainly a huge surprise here, as they decided to go big or go home with our. We're starting up with a huge surprise, as Devin Dukes is the first pick overall in the draft.
What? We're gonna have to get Rocky in here later because I am absolutely shocked that not only did they pick a center here, which I was not necessarily opposed to, but to overlook Marshall and Allen to reach down to Dukes at 17th ranked. 17th ranked Dukes. Now, let me be clear. Devin Dukes had a great, great combine. Finished number one over in the centers. He is definitely one of the more athletic centers of this draft. But I have a feeling he would have been there at 8.
Yeah, it's certainly a really huge surprise here, considering the fact that, as you alluded to, there are two other centers that were ranked higher in both Tarega and Clemens. But I guess that Alaska really sees a huge spark in them, and as a lot of us say, go ahead and get your player if you feel like that they are the best to help your team out, and if Alaska feels like that Devin Dukes is that guy, then I can't really blame them for that.
Yeah, but now let's transition over after that shocker to the Oregon Swashbucklers, a new brand, a new location, a new jersey. Not New Jersey, a New Jersey.
Yes, yes. The Oregon Swashbucklers, one of the teams that have decided to totally rebrand and move over up to Oregon, obviously. And it's a very exciting time here, as I don't believe there really has been Oregon before. And so there's going to be a little bit of added pressure. I have talked to a few of these draftees about the possibility of them being drafted to a team like the Swashbucklers. A lot of them seem very excited to be one of the first players picked in a whole new era of basketball.
Yes, and you have to wonder looking at Oregon's roster. I mean, they made big moves last offseason to bring in Falcam. They have Magnano still on the bench, and obviously Marcus Knight. It seems like they're trying to keep Birdie and Nigel, but you have to wonder, do they feel like they can afford to get into this uh, bidding war over Birdie Williams? I mean, Birdie Lavoie Williams with Alaska of all things. So do they take a safety pick here? And Astrid's still on the board. Do you go ahead and pick up a small forward here, or do they try and use this opportunity to maybe upgrade if they feel like maybe Runikin Falcon is not the center that they've been looking for long term? Bring in maybe a rookie to learn under them for a year or two. For the most part, their starting lineup is pretty set. So what do they do here at the number 2 pick?
Honestly, I just go ahead and pick up Astrid. Like obviously, um, it's a huge surprise still what Alaska did, but that's come and gone. And really, with the fact that Astrid is the best player available, and the fact that there is a chance that they may not be able to bring Birdie back into the Swashbucklers, going to Oregon. So it's probably better to go ahead and get the best player available here in this spot because of that notion. Because you're already very tight when it comes to the draft capital available. Well, the cap available to you with only like 26 million. You still have quite a few slots to fill after that.
Yeah, and it is. God, I'm still flabbergasted by Dukes coming off the board. Is Dukes coming off the board number 1 going to cause a frantic uh, buying war for sinners here tonight?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
I was saying, Dukes coming off the board at number 1, is that going to start a frantic bidding and buying war over the sinners? Because this is a player that we were expecting to still be available, maybe by pick 10 or so. And coming off
Yeah,
number 1, I have to wonder if
I,
Oregon's having to reevaluate their board right now.
I wouldn't be surprised if they would try to do that at this moment because of the fact that Alaska pretty much has set the stage that people are going to be looking for bigs. And it really kind of goes to show that, like, does Alaska feel that does some of these teams feel very confident that they're able to grab some of the players? Because there are a lot of big fur free agents, as alluded to earlier with the first pick, but they're going to be up there in price. Would it be easier for some of these teams to just go ahead, bite the bullet, go for a young player that has a potential to be one of the top big furs in the league, and just go ahead and go for it? And it's going to be a very interesting situation.
Yeah, like I said, I almost feel like they worry perhaps taking Astrid or even Blake Evans here might upset their negotiations with Lavoie Williams. The Kangaroo might take that as disrespectful, but at the same time, you almost have to go with the safety pick. I mean, maybe perhaps going with the swing for Evans makes a little bit more sense in the sense that you could put him in at shooting guard. Right now, they've
Mm.
been playing Nigel Conway at shooting guard. Obviously, we've heard that they've put a contract out for him, but at the same time, the only other area they could really try to improve on would be that big fur, and maybe Marshall comes off the board here.
It's a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go for uh Marshall, but then again, we could see another shocker and see Clemens have a little bit of reverse of the centers getting picked.
Gosh, if we have well, Yeah, I think there's a center even further down. We skipped over Tafer,
Oh yeah, right.
which I think would have been even a wilder first overall pick.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
at the same time, I do think the commissioner is ready to take the stage here.
For the number 2 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Oregon Swashbucklers have selected Astrid Viktorsen, small forward from Narvik, Norway. Congratulations to you, Astrid, on being the number 2 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Pittsburgh Keystones have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Okay, sanity has returned. We are back to
Yes,
normal.
we've gotten out of Crazy Town for a little bit, just a little bit, but we have now seen the top ranked player officially off the board at number 2 for the Swashbucklers, which honestly is a great pick overall. I think that this is certainly the smartest choice for them because I don't want to I don't like you don't want to be that team that bites the bullet after the first center gets off the board with so few furs at that position being available within the top 24. I think that when it comes to that overall, it's better to just go ahead and go for that player to have that safety net in the beginning, and lo and behold, that's what the Swashbucklers did.
Yeah, again, maybe they have a little more insight on how their negotiations are going. Or, again, Williams can play the shooting guard position. They've just played Birdie at small forward. So maybe they still feel confident being able to bring him back and have added a little bit more firepower along with Astrid. But the Sabertooth Tiger now knows where they are going. But next, who will come off the board is the Pittsburgh Keystones are on the clock.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, they don't really have a lot of players that are they do have a lot of slots available and plenty of cap room as well. So they can really go just about in any direction, really. I would imagine that Garland is going their starting guard as well as Chantel being their long term. But I wouldn't be surprised if they try to look for like the best available once again. And I have to go ahead and look at either Shuggy or Blake being able to come off the board right after.
Yeah, again, looking for kind of a shooting guard. That's, I think, the biggest question they have. Obviously, they drafted Rebecca last year. Might be moving her up to power forward. Margot Warrior, we've heard they are in pursuit of retaining, so that might be their center position solved. They don't need to, go out and deal with that. But it is, I agree. I agree with you. I know we've already broken the record. I think last year or 2 years before, you had like 6 straight picked. That was very impressive.
It
Um,
was certainly.
I
No,
agree. I think we're gonna see. I'm going to put Evans here. I agree that Hoskett would be a good fit here as well. But I think the fact that they got rid of their shooting guard with their renegotiation means that they're going to target a offensively focused player here.
yeah, it'd be good for them because of the fact that like I do believe that Pittsburgh is just trying to find a way to restock at this point. I don't think that the rosters that they had these past couple of years have been the strongest that they would like it to be. So really, just trying to go young, and Blake Evan is a perfect pick for sure. With the fact that he is versatile, with both being good at shooting our position as well as the position. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they decide to go there.
And of course, they're probably going to take, Tafer, Hendricks, and completely prove us wrong.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll get an on the cusp player here at number 3. You never know.
Oh no, please do not blow our minds. And like I said, Pittsburgh's another team that we've heard rumors of them pursuing a certain deer that has 2 rings.
Hmm.
Michael River, I'm gonna blame for all the renegotiations that happened this offseason. I'm putting the blame solely on him because he started it all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like with Michael River, the fact that he that he was able to get 2 rings in a row, mind you, as well in his rookie contract. He's certainly
Well, not rookie contract. Well, year 2 of
well,
his
yeah,
rookie contract, and then
year 2, and then like when he resigned, well, when he signed over to Plymouth, if I recall correctly. But
he
yeah,
signed. He was with Plymouth, and he
oh yeah,
did a sign and trade with to join BLV.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Sorry, just getting my notes mixed up. But yeah, just being able to see a player like that, it's obviously keen on. He obviously has a lot of playoff success. It's going to be interesting to see how that in with the draft overall, especially with the fact with him being more so a power forward, and it's going to be something to really kind of look out for and see that really fitting the bill with Blake or Shuggy here. So we'll see how that goes.
Yes, I do see the commissioner heading down to the stage, ready to make that announcement.
For the third pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Pittsburgh Keystones have selected Blake Evans, a small forward point guard from Orlando, Florida. Congratulations to you, Blake, on being the third pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return with the next pick when the Williamsburg Minutemen have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well. The player we were expecting did come off the board. The Blue Healer heading to Pittsburgh.
Yep, can't really go wrong with that pick. Once again, it's really just the flexibility overall with Blake and how he's able to, kind of use his speed and agility that work both of those positions respectively. And it just really kind of goes that Pittsburgh, I think, kind of really wants to go fast here.
Yeah, and like I say, I don't really have anything bad to say about this selection here. We feel like they needed to pick one of the better scorers to kind of accentuate their roster. Now they need to sew up the forward end. But jumping on over now to the Minutemen, bit of an interesting situation we find with them. They have been a perennial contender, but it feels like the roster's age is catching up with them.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. And not to mention the fact that they've been the team that's usually in a rough spot when it comes to their cap situations. They've always have quite a few players that are getting paid in double digits, and this year is no different with both Vera, Michaela, and Renee all having 10+ contracts respectfully. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of play around here with this, especially with the fact that a lot of these players you expect them to be kind of like their twilight contracts in a way. So it's just trying to see if they can try and look forward with these next couple of picks.
Yeah, and you noted that fact. They brought in Michaela Marley, who they developed for a while behind Crystal Davis and Vera La Tierra, and she's kind of flourished. And now you have a problem where you have Vera, you have Crystal, you have uh, sorry, you mentioned her name, Renee. Those three were kind of your 1 through 3 starters, and then you had this great scoring opportunist on the bench who kind of usurped one of them. So you have 4 players trying to fit in the 3 positions, and they've had some struggles with that. And since their bigs have retired or moved on to other teams, they have went with the Kaminsky siblings, and I kind of feel like that might be where their weakest is at the moment. I definitely
Yeah,
don't see them going guard here. I see them maybe picking up Marshall here.
yeah, I think this is where we're going to probably see our second big fur being picked here, especially when it comes to Marshall being the spot. I wouldn't be too surprised if they, if they decide to go big or go home and Clemens as well, kind of get a big of a dog in the fight as well.
Only reason why I say no to Clemens is they will be getting dangerously close to I no, sorry. Yeah, their cat ratio is getting dangerously close then between the two
True.
Kaminsks and Crystal Davis. picking up a cheetah might put and Neil LaRocca if they bring him back, so they'd be right at the 5 if they draft
Yeah.
another cat. So that's something else to keep in mind with these teams, that they don't violate
Hmm.
the species limit rule.
That is true. That's going to be a really big thing because we have noticed when it comes to they do love their women and they also love their cats. But in any case, I do think there's a possibility, a huge possibility of a Bigford to go here. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that you are correct that Marshall will most likely be the one to go for, especially if they aren't planning on resigning one of the Kaminsky's. I believe
Yeah,
Kelsey is the one
Kelsey's
that's
off,
heading.
yeah.
Yeah, Kelsey's going to be off, so I don't know if she'll be back. And I'm pretty sure Kendrick may not be back after this upcoming year as well.
Yeah, I mean, the only other option, and the only reason why I haven't mentioned doing this is perhaps trading back, but I just question what assets they would be acquiring that would be better than going young. It's that double-edged sword of they have a established veteran core that obviously has good chemistry together, but when the chemistry hits the ceiling of their performance, they can't afford to say, well, we're just going to keep what we got. They almost have to make a change, or we'll see them right back in this position next year.
Yeah, it's really kind of those darn if you do, darn if you don't situations. And in all honesty, I personally think that it's better to go ahead and try and rely on on developing your young players to get ready to go ahead and fill in those slots in the starting position. As you alluded to earlier, Vera, Renee, they're not going to be, and Crystal as well. They're not going play forever. Like sooner or later, something's got to give, and it's going to it's better for Williamsburg to try and go for these things now than later. But of course, that's pretty much going to be a little bit of a discussion later on as we head into players picking up their contracts and stuff. But right now, I think the biggest need is Bigford.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk about even going, young. They have Marcelo Oliveira. They have Adawaski Fletcher. They have a lot of guards that can step in. I mean, obviously they have Jack Baker serving kind of a bench center role, uh, but it's just a lot of questions. How young do they go? Do they go big? Do they go, uh, uh, you know, looking to the future for once Vera Latiera does retire? Because, in 2 to 4 years, it might happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think that like at the end of the day, being able to kind of look into the future of Williamsburg and trying to get out of what a lot of fans call the playoff story, where they're good enough to make the playoffs but not good enough to be considered contenders
Hmm.
within the league, and they have to really kind of make a big move, either one make the decision to possibly blow everything up or try and make one last hurrah with a big splashy sign-in. But they don't. But as I alluded to earlier, they don't have a lot of cap room for that for that latter option. So it's going to be one of those situations where they may have to look into possibly, uh, blowing it up and going for a rebuild.
And speaking of, the commissioner is ready to announce the pick.
For the number 4 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Williamsburg Minutemen have selected Marshall Terrega, a center from Santa Rosa, California. Congratulations to you, Marshall, on being the 4th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return for the following pick when the Queen's Pride have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Look at you getting a little bit of a streak going.
I mean, to be fair, the teams that have been up have been very clear in what they needed,
Hmm.
and it seems like only Alaska has really deviated from our thought process here tonight.
Yeah, yeah, that's certainly the case. So far the other teams have made moves that are supposedly expected, and Marshall Terrega is now the second center officially off the board, and that really kind of leaves off one center now, and that's Alan Clemens. We'll see how far he's gonna go down before he gets picked up because I know that you've talked. I know that we talked about
He's
this
ranked
earlier. That
14th. He hasn't gone anywhere. Like,
I know, but considering the fact that like it seems with the fact that him being the only sole center left in the top 24 right now,
there is one
somebody can
more.
pick him up. Oh yeah.
You're forgetting one. My brain will catch up to me in a minute. But no, it is interesting now that we've had two centers go in the top 4, despite none of them being ranked in the top 5.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's pretty much a pretty big shock. I mean, not necessarily a shock of the fact that like a couple of teams in the top 5 wanted to go ahead and go for one of these big players, even though that it can be considered a reach. But I think it's just more so the fact that like one raw. But when it comes to Marshall Rigger and Williamsburg, I think that one is kind of expected because of the situation that they're in right now with the Minutemen. But with all that ado, let's go ahead and jump into Pride as well, who is a team that honestly is pretty much set when it comes to their starting lineup,
Well,
if I recall. I
I
mean,
hate to say it because the one thing they need is a center, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
have a bad feeling here that they were expecting Devin Dukes to still be on the board here. Um, they probably expected Marshall to get picked up in the first 5 picks. They probably did
yes,
not expect to have to say, okay, are we going to take Clemens or are we going to take Kenneth McField, who is the other center?
yeah,
I think they expected to have 3 options here, and now they only have
yeah.
1 or 2.
They only have really one if they want to go pure, but if they want to go like a big fur, then it's just up to 2. But
Now, well, we keep discounting. I don't want to say discounting, but we keep excluding the fact that this free agency is the biggest big fur free agency we have seen in years.
yes,
So
yes,
teams
there's a
don't
lot of
necessarily have to draft a center because they can go get one in free agency.
yep. That like as I said earlier in the draft, there are a lot of players big fur category that are very big names. Jake Turner, DQ. Like the list can just continue to go on and big furs that are available that have very large name recognition. Like it's something that a lot of these teams recognize that they can go ahead and pick up. But it's also because of the fact is, would you rather go young and somewhat cheap, or would you go ahead and go risk it for the biscuit and go for a little bit higher for those big name free agencies? Because I mean, only a handful have gotten offers. Still, there's still a lot of big names that still haven't gotten how big this draft class, well, this free agency class has been for the FBA this year, especially when it comes to the big furs. So I wouldn't be like if they decide not to go for a center here, just to be like, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and take that opportunity to jump on that. They could. They have 30 million available, but how much do they want to invest into that in order to fill up the rest of their bench?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. And I think the commissioner is ready to take the stage as we find out where they went.
For the 5th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Queen's Pride have selected Alan Clemens, a big fur from San Jose, California. Congratulations to you, Alan, on being the number 5 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. We'll return for the next pick when the Tallahassee Typhoons have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
5 picks, 3
3
big furs.
centers, none of them top. So we remember the 2014 FBA draft where we had quite a few centers fly off the board very early, but they were the highest rated centers
Mhm.
in those drafts. But apparently tonight, the center depth is being eaten up before anyone has an opportunity to even consider it.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be a situation where, whew, it's not gonna be. It's not a fun thing. It's certainly some teams are probably panicking a little bit, especially those that are in the later half of the draft that they're looking for bigs in this scenario, because basically all of the big furs that are within that could be
McField.
within reach is gone.
McField's the only top 24 center left, and we are at pick 6.
Yeah. Yep. And it's completely insane. It's pretty crazy to me. And the thing that really kind of puts in another situation is the fact that Tallahassee can pick a big fur too in this situation as well. Considering the fact that, like, Rosalie Smooth is getting up there in age. And she's on her last year of her deal. There really isn't a lot of depth in the big fur, because a lot of them are heading into freeds. Because all they have left is Rosalie Smook and Dylan Redfield and Harrison York, which is in the deep reserves category. So they're a little bit lacking there in the big fur category. But at the same time, they do have their guard slots available as well. And of course, it goes into the discussion of whether or not, if they want to go ahead and move on from Redmayne and for a go for a guard here to kind of really give them give them a new floor general to go a little bit young, or if they want to go ahead and go for this huge panic move and go from.
I'm I'm lost. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, Tallahassee has a lot of needs they could possibly be filling. I mean, obviously you look at Dylan Redfield, veteran, but how long is he going to stick around after this? Is he going to want to sign another contract with them?
Mm,
Uh, I hope they try and keep around Martin. I mean, I think he's a great player to bring back to this team. Redmayne, again, a player who's available for signing. They have a lot of options, and I hate to say it, but they're probably going to go with the point guard here because uh, I don't know if they can really afford to try and bring back Redmayne and all these other players that they might be seeking when they have these highly rated point guards available with Raymond Lee and Shuki Hoskut. Uh, they are all available right now.
yep. Honestly, I'd probably go for more so Raymond Lee here, because the fact that, like, they are more known to be a passer
Yeah,
comparatively.
and I mean, if they bring back the Buffalo, they could definitely, swing for a different shooting guard and maybe even try and bring back uh, Martins and move him over to small forward because I think he can excel in that role there. He
That
definitely
is
has the
true,
body for it. It's
for
just the
sure.
question of is the team going to put him in a position to succeed? And other teams have been in pursuit of him so far.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. I mean, Tallahassee certainly can make a lot of moves, but I do think that with uh, a lot of the top players still available, like Shuggy, like Raymond, falling down a little bit in this area to 6, I wouldn't be surprised they decide to really go that route.
Yeah, and they may also need a 3-point shooter, honestly, at this point. This team has struggled with the three ball. I mean, obviously, they've been relying on their Buffalo to get it done, but Redmayne, when he gets double teamed, is just not able to make it work. So, do you go maybe with a more, I don't want to say a specialty player here, but a player that can shoot the three that you're going to try and develop over time to become a full time starter down the road, which is possible as a developmental idea, but they have so many contracts expiring next year that anything could go here.
Yeah, and that's really what makes this intriguing about Tallahassee, because they don't have too much cap this year, but next year, considering that at least right now no one's signed past 2023, they could potentially make some noise, make a lot of big splashes. But of course, I think the main priority right now is care of their young shooting guard in age Martin, and really trying to get him as much as possible, considering of where he's at in his career compared to anyone else that's on free agency in this team. So I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the case, that they decide to go ahead and hop on the Raymond Lee train and go for him.
And I see the commissioner is ready with the envelope heading to the stage.
For the sixth pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Tallahassee Typhoons have selected Aurora Hopkins, a guard from Brisbane, Australia. Congratulations to you, Aurora, on being the number 6 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Arizona Demons have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they did go guard, but they went small for a big splash.
Yeah, and it's a very intriguing one because even though that uh, she definitely is quite small in size. She was definitely interesting to talk with as well. As I interviewed her during the combine. I think the big question here is the fact that are they going to rely on a lot of their coaching to coach her up as a passer? Because she's not really known to be much of a passer situation.
No, she wants to be a shooting guard. I feel like with her how she plays, it's just she's going to have a lot of obstacles to overcome and to develop as a player.
Mhm.
And I feel like she needs a good veteran to guide her, especially at point guard, because she's going to need some assistance getting those openings that she can build her confidence in the FBA with. She can't try to carry this team with scoring because she's going to get shut down. All they have to do is say, hey, Jake, go stand next to her and see how that goes.
Yeah, I definitely agree in that predicament. I think Aurora Coppins is a really good player. She's very offensively savvy. But I think the big thing here is that that she's gonna have to develop as a passer as her career like really kicks off into gear because of her size. And I think Tallahassee could be the perfect place for that, considering the fact that they need a point guard anyways. If they decide to bring Redmayne back for maybe a year, kind of help her out a little bit, since Redmayne knows a thing or two about being a huge offensive asset, but being very small at the same time. So I think that he would be a great mentor for her.
Yes, and we move on to the Arizona Demons, another team that has rebranded slash removed a little bit. And looking at this team here at 7, we know their biggest free agent move is to try and retain the Arctic Fox Kyler Anari. They already have Dennis Summers signed for 3 more years. They already have Tino Hazari signed for 3 more years. Morgan McCarthy for 2 more years. There's a wide open spot at power forward, and looking at the draft board, you have 2 really good power forwards in Mandeville and Bivens available.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be the possibility. I wouldn't like. This is the perfect spot for Arizona to pick up one of those two players. And honestly, trying to go for probably the higher ranked, which in this is Mandeville will probably be the preferred one since they are the highest on the board when it comes to the power forward position. But either way, it could be very solid.
Yeah, I mean, unless they drafted a center here, unless they drafted a point guard here, which we have to point out, Shuggy, ranked number 2 overall, yet to be picked up. We'll have to keep an eye out on who, you know, at that who gets to the point where they cannot afford to not pick him. Like
Yeah,
there will come a point where someone goes, "Okay, we're like number 13, we can't not pick the number 2 pick.
yeah, for
Number 2
sure.
rated player."
We're starting to get to a point where a lot of players we didn't really expect to potentially not get picked within the lottery portion of the draft is looking to be more of a reality here, especially with Shuggy and Raymond, especially with those two. But I think for Arizona, considering the fact that they're pretty much set starting wise when it comes to their respective guard positions in Summers and Azari, I think possibly either going for a more wing for a type player are just going power forward in general to be the way to go.
Yes, and I see the commissioner is ready to tell us who they've gone with.
For the number 7 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Arizona Demons have selected Chet Mandeville, a power forward from Charles City, Iowa. Congratulations to you, Chet, on being the 7th lucky number 7 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Alaska Arctics have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Whew. And now we are back, not in full circle necessarily, but we're back to the topic of the Arctics after what seems to be an absolutely bonkers pick. Now kind of seems like a little bit of a finesse move because the fact that we still have Shuggy, the number 2 overall player, still available in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to touch back on Mandeville. We were definitely right, and it seems like the way they are going. They picked up the D leaguer who hopefully will be able to transition well to the FBA. He's gonna have hopefully the support of the team. If they are able to bring back a Nari, I do see them being more competitive this next season, being a playoff team. If they manage not to keep a Nari, they may have some issues, but we'll have to see how this pick pans out for them. Because I mean, honestly, this felt like it was going to fall in their lap between him or Bivens. One of these two should be going here.
Yeah, and honestly, like looking back to the history when considered the whips, prior to this year. That spot in particular has been one of their. They've been trying to find that right piece for a very long time in Arizona. So hopefully that'll work out for them. I do want to see them finally make it to the playoffs this year. It's been a very long time since Arizona be able to make it to the playoffs, and hopefully that this is going to elevate, but especially if they bring back to the fray.
Yes, and like you were saying, we are fortunately back to Alaska. A lot of our draft boards, we were originally looking at Dakota being here, but then they've traded away that pick, so had to throw all that information out. But I would go back to Alaska at 8. This is where I expected them to go with Devin Dukes, honestly. And maybe they knew
Yeah,
something we didn't, that a lot of centers were going to be coming off the board. But dang, you're right. They could. I mean, they could have also taken Shuggy at 1 and then waited here and hoped that Devin Dukes was still around.
yeah. I mean, like with how things have fell on the board here, Alaska looks really smart at the moment. Really kicking it off themselves with the big first spree. So now they're in a situation could easily get a top 5 player at the number 8 slot between Shuggy, Raymond, and Jonas as well. So it's certainly probably the best case scenario if you are an Arctics fan, for sure. Much love to you guys. Uh,
Not
but
biased at all.
I'm not being biased. What are you
Okay, when
talking about?
Baltimore comes on the clock, I am gonna absolutely show my bias. So,
Okay, all right. I'm sorry for just giving a little bit of support to fans, okay? But in any case, I do think that like with this situation, Alaska can easily get Shuggy here and really kind of really fill up their young core at this moment and really just kind of call it a day and be seeing this draft is very successful for them.
yeah, I mean, they still have another pick. Don't forget, they have the
Yeah,
20th
they do.
overall
They do.
pick.
They do.
So they're gonna get another player. And with how many guards are on the board, I almost have to say maybe go with the power forward here. Go with Bivens. Go with Acosta. Get a small forward. And I say that because I'm whispering in the ear that they already have a point guard. Yes, Hoskett is a good shooter, but they could also pick up one of the other shooting guards probably that are going to slip to 20 at this point. There is no way that there is not going to be a top 20 point guard still available at 20 because of how
Hmm.
absolutely insane they have done by picking Devin Dukes at number 1.
Yeah, that's certainly the case to be here for Alaska. It's certainly going to be a huge gut because it's going to be another big fur type player off the board. Considering that we have already a good amount of them already out of the running. So
Or they pick McField and steal both centers. Just take the 16th and 17th ranked center. One of them will work out.
that would be amazing. I would be like, all right, cool. I love the draft. The draft is but in this case, I do think that possibly going for Bibbins here could be a really interesting choice. But I think at this point, you have the final pick in the lottery section of the draft. Might as well go ahead and go for the best player available. That um, Shuggy being able to fit with Saras will be an interesting combo between the two. But it's certainly one that can help really kind of put them on the map to possibly make it to the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and I think the commissioner is ready to tell us what craziness is about to unfold.
For the number 8 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Alaska Arctics have selected Ravishu Qatar, a guard from Mahabelawashar, India. Congratulations to you, Ravishu, on being the number 8 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. A return for the next pick when the Tennessee Moonshiners have selected their pick. Thank you.
Well.
All right.
They did go guard. They went shooting
They
guard,
did.
which is a need they had definitely. Again, Hoskut. When is it going to be that time that a team can't afford to pass on them? But we are going to bring in uh, Matt Lewis shortly, and he is going to give us his thoughts. We'll just work on getting him in. But
Yeah.
God, second pick, not as crazy as the first, but still.
It's still up there in the crazy in the little bit of the crazy chain. We spicy. Alaska's taking risk. I love it personally. Because it makes things very interesting to think. It's certainly an interesting choice, mainly because of the fact that Qatar is more of a pass first guard. I mean, yes, they know how to shoot the three pretty well, I believe. But at the same time, they're not as versatile compared to the other teams. But Qatar's a pretty good choice considering that a lot of the guards here aren't very 3-point savvy from the get go.
Yes, and we have Matt Lewis joining us from FSPN. How are you doing? And we have to get your opinion on this draft. You've been behind the scenes. We've been busy up here in the booth.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going great.
Doing pretty well.
What are your thoughts on the first 8 picks here tonight?
Hey, someone must have stolen all the oranges, or there's a severe lack of vitamin C on the draft board right now. I don't know what to think of this. I guess I could have been a little bit more ready to understand the need at center, but you would have thought that, again, as you had mentioned earlier, as I was listening in before I joined you guys, that, yeah, there were these options in free agency that no one has seemingly pursued, or, they're looking to the draft instead of free agency, which is kind of wild.
Definitely, and I mean, we're gonna have to see how this pans out over time, you know, with these centers that seem like reaches. I mean, these players were not ranked highly. This is not, the 2014 draft with Jake Turner and Hero. Uh, These are centers that, were considered the bottom half of the draft, already coming off the board in the lottery.
So I do believe that Tennessee has some solid options here now. Moving on to their pick, that they probably won't need to be looking at some of these bigs or centers, digging deep. They have a lot of variety of options available to them.
They do. I do think they may. It's the question of do they go for a power forward or a small forward with the fact that they drafted Weber last year, who fell to them. That was a bit of a shock, I think, in their minds. But at the same time, they do have questions at point guard. You know,
Right.
we have 2 guards in the top 4 that have slipped here, and we have
Cough, cough.
questions.
Huskin and Lee, one of them possibly getting picked here. Yeah, and like I think at this juncture with the fact that, of course, with Kierkegaard pretty much has got the center position on lock. It's still a question of whether or not they want to bring back Lee Barraquin, but I think at this point, if you are any of these teams that are going to be outside of the, excuse me, outside of the lottery, like at this point, you might as well just go ahead and just try and rely on all of guards that most of these lottery teams just kind of hand gifted to these teams, especially with in Tennessee's case.
Yeah, I agree with you, Marcus. I think either Lee or Hoskett are solid choices here. Why not? Take the best available.
Well, maybe they have plans to bring back their point guard Jean Ferdinand. They could continue to keep him around if they so chose, but I think the commissioner is ready to take the stage and let us know what they've gone with.
For the 9th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Tennessee Moonshiners have selected Roy G. Bivens, a forward from Chicago, Illinois. Congratulations to you, Roy, on being the number 9 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall be returning shortly when the Edmonton Excavators have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
So, Matt, unfortunately, it looks like they chose to go with the need of a power forward or a small forward, it seems like. I mean, he can play the big power forward position due to his weight. At 300 pounds, 6'6", he's a little small, but definitely can use his body to bully. At the same time, they have Weber, who's a very similar build to him on the floor.
You just called a 300-pounder small. Do you realize that?
Okay, I know I'm 5'10", but for a power forward, 6'6" is on the small side.
Yes. I understand, and it's not terribly surprising here. I've never been one to predict these drafts well, given the fact that I had to come up with some clever joke on my way in here to explain the phenomenon that is take all the centers available and ignore everybody else. But hey, there's every year is a new year. I can see where they were concerned at forward there in Tennessee. I don't shy away from saying they got us, the reporters, thinking twice about, again, Marcus is the one who gets the predictions right. I'm just the guy who comes in occasionally and says some funny words for a while.
I mean, Ryan has a little bit of a streak himself. Got quite a few.
Yeah, but we're gonna dive into the Excavators, Matt. They have a lot of openings, especially with the retirement of Bo Dappermont, and I have to imagine here they are a little upset that the center run has happened. Or I should say the big fur run. A lot of these centers could have played power forward as well. Obviously, they have Zachary Cooper and Baxter Buckley, the two Beavers, going in the free agency, and if they will be able to bring them back or not.
They got to re-sign Cooper and Buckley. That would at least secure their shooting guard and small forward positions for them. So they are looking probably for depth here with this pick, somebody who could eventually come into a starting position. If it's a point guard situation that they're looking for, there are a couple possibilities here. But as Edmonton has been this team that's kind of fluctuated in the middle of their division, I'm sure they are looking to make a big splash with this new redesign. It's a new era for them. Why not bring in the guy who's currently was ranked number 2 prior to the draft starting, to sign off on that whole idea?
Well, you have to also keep in mind last year before they rebranded, another team that's kind of undergone a bit of a change, the Excavators had both the first and 4th pick, I believe is what it was, because they picked up Xavier Clark and Nur Awada.
Right.
Now, do they give up? I don't want to say give up. Do they move on from the idea of Nur becoming the starting point guard later down the line, or do they keep them around more for the bench, or that kind of change of pace player? They definitely could pick up a point guard here as a safety pick, but I believe I know they already have Niren still on the team, but I feel like they have to pick up forward depth just for some safety here. We know that they've been trying to pursue Tyler Conley, but I have a feeling that they're not going to be able to match the contract that he's looking for.
I guess I was thinking in the idea that if they weren't able to secure both Cooper or Buckley, or if one of them walks, they're going to need somebody that, as they are both swing furs, somebody that could either play at the shooting guard or forward position. I mentioned point guard primarily because Malmqvist doesn't have anybody on the roster currently signed that can back her up. So in that regard, you can chase free agency. Yeah, I know. I'm not so sure in your second year that they're quite ready for that role, but we'll see.
I mean, that's fair, definitely. And like you said, they have a fair bit of options that they probably weren't expecting to be available here at the 10th overall pick. We talk back about the 2015 draft where the number 1 rated player fell to 11th, and here we have the number 2 player. Is it finally going to be time here at number 10? Or is it going to be number 12 before we see them come off the board?
And you want me to answer that question?
I do, because I see the elephant slowly heading to the stage, so you better get this answer out quick.
Jonas Acosta. Let's go with forward.
For the 10th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Edmonton Excavators have selected Raymond Lee, a shooting guard from Toronto, Canada. Congratulations to you, Raymond, on being the number 10 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return with the next pick when the Hawaii Kunas have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
You're always wrong, Matt. What are you doing here?
What am I doing here? No, really, you made me do that.
I did.
You know what I said at first, and you were like, "No."
Yeah, I mean, he did walk.
Oh,
Not gonna
I'm sorry.
steer away from that.
this is why I'm a general
very interesting choice here for Edmonton. I think it's a weird spot for Edmonton. You know, I think that overall they do want to bring a lot of their players back, but at the same time there really isn't a lot of players within the at least within the big four category that are left that could be available, that really could be a huge asset for them at this point of the draft.
Yeah, well, we're gonna dive on into Hawaii now, a team that, there's gonna be some question marks. They have Scooney Barrett renegotiating his contract. You have to imagine that he's either gonna look for a nice pay raise, or he's going to try and maybe find another team that is able to compete for a ring, because Hawaii has just not been able to convert when given the opportunities.
Yeah, they've kind of also been in, I don't know if it's like an upgraded playoff purgatory or not, but they've always been seen as one of those juggernaut teams in the FBA, always been on the top half of the West for the longest of time, but they just haven't been able to go ahead and make that final notch here in trying to make it to the FBI finals once again.
Okay, Matt, unprompted, I'm asking your opinion without, trying to influence you at all.
Uh-oh.
Who do you think they go here?
Well, Hawaii is indeed in an interesting situation. You mentioned the renegotiation of the contract of Scooney Barrett. They're likely going to want to do whatever they have to do to keep Scooney in the building. They realize the value that Scooney provides to the organization. A lot of the fan base is behind the Otter, and they know for a fact that without him, it's kind of entering a possibility that they have to draft a power forward here. So with that being said, they've always kind of been trying out different people at the point guard position too. my initial gut feeling was point guard. I'm going to assume they get Barrett back. They have the cap space to do it. It's just a matter of who at this point in time fits that role. But again, I'm never right. So you are wasting your time here.
So you're saying point guard here. You're saying Hoskett comes off the board.
Hoskett needs to come off the board. And I think right now Hawaii has a point guard concern. So they could plug in Hoskett right at the start and get him in the starting lineup, and it would actually be kind of like a plug and play situation. But that's just my opinion.
Marcus, what are your thoughts?
I certainly agree with the fact that point guard probably is going to be the primary need here. Though, will I see Hoskett be the player off in this one? Maybe not, unless they really rely on trying to develop him as a passer, because he's not much of a passer, as I've alluded to. But again, since Lee is now officially off the board because of Edmonton, which I'm sure that Hawaii is kind of seething a little bit with that, with a little bit of less, they could possibly say go ahead and get Kincaid, or is it? Am I saying that right? I'm trying to make sure.
Kincaid.
Kincaid.
The
Okay,
cow.
cool. Yes, the cow. It could be a possibility that Kincaid could possibly be the player to go for. So I might go for her. I might Rhea McCade as my final answer.
Hoskett. If Hoskett doesn't come off the board, I'm just gonna throw away my draft board. So, and speaking of, I think the commissioner is ready to tell us whether or not I will still be here in the next pick.
Oh boy.
For the number 11 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Hawaii Cougars have selected Kenneth McField, a big fur from Savannah, Grand Cayman Island. Congratulations to you, Kenneth, on being the 11th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Williamsburg Minutemen have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
In the world is going on? What in the world is making these decisions?
Marcus, bring him back.
Well, okay.
We
all
can't
right,
do this without him.
No,
Fine.
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I
Fine.
can spearhead everything. It's okay. I can spearhead everything.
No, I have to be here. I'm getting paid tonight.
Yeah, because I'm sure that that'll be like a long discussion from our bus. We decide to just left in the middle of the draft.
Okay, congratulations to the iguana, first of all.
Yes,
Draft
of
night.
course.
It's draft night.
Pick
Congratulations.
11.
Congratulations.
There are
Yes.
no sinners left from the top 24.
Yeah.
Yep. Honestly, it's quite it's a little bit of a surprise. Not too much of a surprise, I should say.
No,
It's
this is a massive surprise. What does Scooney
okay.
think about this?
I mean, I think that this is kind of one of those situations where it's like, all right, they are looking at this as a possible situation of the Cougars probably have reached the peak of this roster. They could be hinting the fact that they might possibly blow it up after this year. I don't know. I can't certainly blame Hawaii for wanting to have this feeling, considering that they have been within the top part of the West for so long, but just haven't been able to get over that hump to finally get a ring these past few years. So I wouldn't be really surprised if they said, you know what, it might be time for us to actually kind of look within ourselves if it's time for them to have a reset button.
I
Insanity.
am negotiating a bonus after this draft.
And you know, the thing was too that I expected, which we have the pick here. It's Williamsburg on the clock, if I believe to be right. But Baltimore is next, and I had them picking a true center.
That might be out of the case now.
It's out of the case unless they tap out.
They could trade back. I mean, Williamsburg, previous pick, they selected a center. I guess they just made the right choice because there wouldn't be one here.
Yeah. I mean, there's still the on the cusp players as well. We still have Tafer within the field that is a pure center.
We have 5 more centers left in this draft. We are at pick 11.
Yes,
Magical.
I'm very well aware.
We're gonna have
Very,
non-top 24 centers getting pulled off the board. Mark my words.
we probably will if things have kind of go out. But it really kind of is honestly, as we continue talking about this, I think the big thing is essentially, are a lot of teams afraid to really send out the big bucks for a lot of these players that are in free agency right now? I think that's kind of been the feel so far, is that a lot of, because right now I haven't really noticed outside of that has gotten above 15 million from what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about Williamsburg. I can't even at the moment. They have a great opportunity here to pick up a red panda as a potential future point guard or shooting guard. And it would be you know, 12 picks back from where we were projecting him to go, but
Yeah,
Well,
it's certainly an interesting situation, but with Williamsburg, anything can kind of go. As we have alluded to earlier, possibly looking into the future could be the best bet. And what better way to do it than to go ahead and fell off quite a lot more probably than what we expect, considering how things have played out. I'm sure that Shuggy would be happy to prove a lot of these teams that have passed on wrong, as they try to go ahead and jump to Williamsburg, kind of elevate.
yeah, and one thing to keep in mind, there is a slight kernel of good news for players who, you know, do slip in the draft is by slipping in the draft, you're going to a team that was in a better position the prior season to make the playoffs and compete. So you can actually find yourself falling to a team that gets you immediate success in the playoffs.
Yeah,
yes.
that is for sure. I mean, like obviously every player who comes to this draft, they want to have that opportunity to be a starter. Like we all had that dream going into it. I know I certainly did. But being able to be picked on a team that already has very experienced players, that has pretty much, set the standard of what it is to be a winning organization, that is a huge plus. And Williamsburg has had a good amount of success um, within its history, and there's certainly plenty of players that are considered to be one of the top guards in FBA history. So if Williamsburg does decide to go for him, I don't think that's really necessarily a bad spot. Sure, you want to be a top 5, be one of the lottery picks, but you're just gonna have to take it on the chin and like, hey, they picked me here for a reason. I'm gonna make them.
Yes, and speaking of, the commissioner is ready to tell us the 12th pick. We're halfway done.
For the number 12 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, Williamsburg Minutemen have selected Shuggy Hoskett, a guard from Bishop's Briggs, Scotland. Congratulations to you, Shuggy, on being the number 12 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Baltimore Spirits have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Finally did it, guys.
We did it! Ryan, you threw enough of a fuss to make the draft change.
Yay! Because clearly
Good
the
job.
teams listen to me. As Marcus was alluding to, I think it's a good idea to bring in some young blood to develop behind a Crystal Davis and a Vera Latiera. It's just a question of, in 2 years, will they be able to keep him? That's a very crowded field at guard on the Williamsburg Minutemen. He honestly might turn out to be good trade bait with other teams that realize after free agency starts wrapping up as, hey, we actually need another guard. We did not get what we needed from free agency. So I don't blame Williamsburg here taking what was essentially handed to them. It's a good, talented player. Yes, they're a little full at that position, but there's going to be opportunities to possibly unload him to other teams if they choose to go that route, or they can develop him behind some really great players.
Well, you
Yeah,
can make a
and
case now. Go ahead, Marcus.
oh,
No, I want to hear
no,
Matt
you
Lewis's
go,
thoughts before we can think about
go
it.
for it, Matt. Go for it, Matt. Go for it,
Okay,
Matt.
thank you. I was just gonna say that at this current time, the Williamsburg Minutemen are a contender for being the current winners of this draft, and I'm not just saying that because they're getting a number 2 prediction pick at number 12 here, but also they were managing to steal one of those centers out of the draft before they became unavailable. So with 2 picks here in the top of the draft, they were able to get some really good players onto their team to help them out of the situation that they've been in the last couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you with that sentiment. It's certainly a situation where um, the Minutemen certainly need to see if they can get ready for this new era of basketball for them. And I certainly think that these 2 picks can really kind of boost them up a little bit and kind of transition into possibly leveling up into that scenario where they could be considered contenders for an FBA championship. But of course, that's going to remain to be seen depending on how things go as we continue on in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Matt Lewis. The fact that they were able to pick up both Marshall and Shuggy with the, I believe, 4th and 12th picks is definitely a steal in terms of what we expected talent-wise. Obviously, these
Right.
teams may have some better understanding of what they are rating these players' ceilings as, but let's jump on over into Baltimore, a team that has a lot of questions and is probably very upset being at number 13 right now that they did not have an opportunity to pick up a power forward. I mean, Jonas is still on the board, but I do not feel like he is necessarily what they're looking for. I mean, at 6'7", 210, he's on the small side, the Capybara. I would rate him more as, slotting into the small forward position, which is a need they also have. They have a lot of places they need to fill.
Yeah,
Actually,
they. Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's your turn.
Oh, all right. I was going to say that like the it's kind of in a really a good and a bad position for them because as you alluded to, Baltimore, if they were looking to possibly on and really kind of get a big fur, they're gonna probably have to into the free agency at this point. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But at the same time, they are primed to get Yona here, as it seems to be a really kind of a set in stone, highest available right now. Small forward position is going to be a need. Not sure if Lisa Dunphy is going to be like the choice. I think they actually have put an offer in for Dunphy. I have to check one more time, but um no, they haven't. Okay, so yeah, so with that in mind, they could potentially, if I remember correctly, I think Baltimore is also has.
Marcus, you're cutting out. We didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, as I was saying that it could be a possibility that I do think Yona could be the pick here. But if I do recall correctly, Baltimore has also been the team that has made some very interesting decisions, from what I remember. But yeah, it's certainly a possibility that Yona could be the best choice, best available already at the fit for small forward. It sucks that they haven't hit the big four, but they may not be able to fix their power forward position in the draft, but they still have plenty of cap space available to possibly look into many of the many players that are in free agency right now that's in that category.
Matt Lewis, your thoughts?
Yeah, very quick here because I think they are out of time. But just to be clear, that we're talking about Jonas Acosta or Yona Blaze.
Jonas Acosta.
Acosta.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to disagree with you, Ryan, and say I think Acosta actually fits in quite well with the Baltimore Spirits program because they are pretty straightforward and to the point, and that's what my opinion is the bread and butter of the Spirits organization.
Yeah, and I will actually chime in. There is one player I do see on the board I could see them going with, and it's a player maybe not a lot of people were expecting. Esmeralda Patterson,
Mm,
the stretch big fur.
right.
6'11", ranked 18th overall, capybara. Good passing. I could see a bit of. She provides an opportunity to make a bit of a change at um, the kind of play style with having obviously Lisa DuPont, um, and if they manage to retain Saphira Kelly, they could have three great three-point shooters on the team, and one at power forward is not a position you normally have to worry about guarding at the perimeter.
For the first time, I think, in FBA history, we have two capybaras in the
Yes,
draft.
and one of them's not, and one of them may get drafted before the other.
But I'm curious to wonder, given that we're a little bit delayed here now, if there's something going on.
Well,
behind the
no,
scenes
that
with board.
they did. The pick is in. They're heading now.
Oh, okay.
For the number 13 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Baltimore Spirits have selected Esmeralda Patterson, a forward from West Valley City, Utah. Congratulations to you, Esmeralda, on being the number 13 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Huntsville Mayors have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well then, would you look at that? That's what a keen eye there, Ryan.
Yes. Again, I'm not a bit of a stretch. Again, someone ranked 18th, but at the same time, they've had some real struggles with the power forwards and centers coming off the board early. So at the same time, they may feel like, hey, we need to pick them up here. And again, she offers a unique play style for a big. And that might be what Baltimore's looking to play off of with a lot of three-point shooting.
Yeah,
You
for
saw
sure.
something.
Go, Matt
It's
Lewis.
your turn,
What are you
go
going to
ahead.
accuse me
Go,
of?
Matt.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's more just disappointment that I cannot be as talented at the pickingness of these.
It's okay. It's okay. One of these days, you're going to be able to get a pick.
Okay, Huntsville. What's happening? Pick.
Me?
Yes, you.
Okay, well, I had Huntsville as just looking for general depth because they're actually one of the better, in terms of free agency, they're one of the better set teams right now.
So the
At least
most
in my
challenging to
opinion.
guess is what you're saying.
Yes.
And I'm telling you to pick now.
So knowing that organization a little bit and how they do things and what they prefer, this is another situation where I think they go for the best available.
So Acosta.
Yes, and Acosta could be in the power forward slot. They could play off the bench. If they don't manage to re-sign Wendy Brown, who is, getting towards the latter end of her career, and may decide to do something different with the rest of her career here, then we're also again at the situation of the point guard. But I think they go with the forward here because that's the currently best available player on the board.
Yeah, and I could see that. We also have heard rumors that they're going after Neo Snyman, the Meerkat out of Dakota, to possibly replace her at point guard. Looking at the draft board, we still have Maria Kincaid, which Marcus brought up earlier, and Zuri Varn as another point guard. I could see them perhaps taking the chance here and going ahead and grabbing one of those two just in case they are unable to get what they want in free agency. Because Kincaid had a great combine game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think Kincaid is probably the best option for Huntsville because I can understand Jonas Acosta in this case as well, especially since Travis Buckner will be on his final year, and who knows if they want to keep Buckner around after that contract is up. So definitely possible going for Jonas. Very is honestly the most professionally savvy of of all of the draftees here, as if so myself. But I think that when you look at the possible, I think really the best option is probably going for the best guard available, which in this case is Maria Kincaid.
So I've talked
I'm
two
gonna say
people. I've talked one person, and have I talked you, Matt, and Matt into also agreeing with me here.
yeah. So I say Acosta still. My second choice would be Zuri Varn, and the reason I say that is while I do believe Maria Kincaid is a very determined player, um, there are some concerns there, maybe being too determined. But at the same time, I do think that she has proven herself in the combine game and has an amazing track record so far that's definitely boosted her rating. And questions just, is Huntsville the best fit for her? I'm not sure. I can see them going between any of those three players, really.
I mean, they definitely have options. The only reaches we've really seen so far have been center. We are catching up to where we would expect to be in the draft board with Lorenz Valerio, the swing for Kincaid, and Varn being the three that we would expect to be seeing come off the board soon, which is a good point of talking about depth.
Right.
Any of those could be good depth players, especially Valerio with his swing for position for teams that need or have questions at shooting guard and small forward. And like I said, Huntsville is one of the most set rosters for next year. They honestly don't even need a high draft pick here. They could trade it away. I mean, they might be in the works of doing that.
Yeah,
Well,
certainly a possibility.
that would be crazy, but it hasn't happened yet, and we know this draft is not shying away from being crazy.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
we've taken no, like, we gotten crazy from the jump.
I mean, it's been a while since a center's been picked. Looking at my watch, 2 picks ago, so I think we're due another center now as well.
Oh, so do you think that they're gonna possibly go ahead and go for
No, they put so much
Silver?
money into Okayu. They are not throwing more money at a center, but I think the commissioner is heading to the stage now. Let's see what he has to say.
For the number 14 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Huntsville Mariners have selected Maria Kincaid, a point guard from University of Eastern Ontario. Congratulations to you, Maria, on being in the 14th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Arizona Demons have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Matt, you had an opportunity to join the team that was right.
Yeah.
Look, it's okay for him being the opposition, okay? Like, I feel like he should have the sole crown when he is eventually right. I feel like that we should give him that platform.
Okay.
Tell you what, strike one. If I get 2 more strikes, you kick me out of here.
Okay.
We won't do that. We won't do that.
Are you gonna start
Well,
picking
but
really
if you
random
feel like you're
things
done, yeah. If you're like, are you just gonna pick anyone that's not in the top 20?
just
You
to
know
get
what's
out of
good?
here so we can stop
Just be
bullying
like,
you?
yeah, no, let's do it. Noah Silver is next.
They know this already, but I do have uh, prior commitments after pick 16. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Huntsville, it makes sense if they're looking to build some guard depth up, especially behind a Wendy Brown or whoever they bring in. Looking towards the future, this is kind of the point of the draft where teams are starting to look less immediate starter and more long-term development. But speaking of, let's jump over to the Demons, who we've seen once already this draft. They made the selection of Mandeville, and now they find themselves here with the 15th pick and a few options available to them. Who do they go here, Matt?
well, I'm not going to have a very good first answer here. But obviously, we know they've picked a forward. And as tradition would presume that they are not going to be looking for another forward, there is certainly not much in the way of center to choose from right now. So that leaves them with Swingfer or guard depth. They could pick up Mads Rindahl here. That would be a good selection. We haven't talked about him yet in this draft. And we've still got Zuri Varn as I think a good selection at the disposal here. Maybe not currently the most feasible option, but also we've not been very. This league has moved on from the idea of only certain species can play in certain teams based on their geographic location. So I don't think that would be a problem here either. But with Arizona having this opportunity, that's what I am leaning towards right now. Is they're going to be looking towards the swing for role and perhaps looking at somebody like Rindahl, or perhaps digging a little bit deeper and going all the way to Helen Ariti.
Well, Marcus, what are your thoughts as we have I think about a minute before the draft pick will be in?
It certainly is an interesting situation. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go for guard depth here, in my opinion. Mainly because of the fact that like they really don't have a lot of guard depth. Hazari, from what I remember and from what I'm looking at. So, with that in mind, I would not be surprised if they do to go ahead and um, go for possibly the best guard available, which in this case could be Lorenz, Valerio, or Zero. Certainly going to be a little bit of reach as Jonas continues to go down from the draft board, but I think in this case, I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to say, yeah, let's go ahead and try and stack up a little bit on our guard depth as we continue and just go for the one of those two. And I think it's probably going to be more so Valerio, since they're in the higher up.
Well, the commissioner is ready to take the stage. We'll see which way they go.
For the number 15 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Arizona Demons have selected Zuri Varn, a guard from Thunder Bay Predator College. Congratulations to you, Zuri, on being the 15th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. He'll return for the next pick when the Albany Alphas have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they did go guard depth with Zuri.
Yeah, they might have some reservations. Well, let me put it this way. Tino Hazari remains one of the cornerstones of their leading five. And I think if they keep Kyler Inari, that will be a solid, front 1 and 2. Inari's free agency has picked up, competitively speaking, there's a lot of things that could happen there. So they still going to want some depth at guard regardless. And and I think right now, somebody who could either fill in at the 1 or 2 slot in a pinch is certainly the safety net that they can rely on. Zuri Varn has proven herself capable, definitely is in the running of one of these players that is out there to get shit done, if I can swear on stream.
I think that we're allowed to have one word per.
Okay, that's my word.
I didn't even curse when I walked away from the mic.
Hey, you know what? It happens. Right?
I wasted my chance. Well, I don't blame, again, the depth pick here. This is, again, that time of period where teams are not necessarily looking for an immediate starter unless they are really desperate at one position. But we have to talk about Acosta, ranked 5 overall, now sitting here at 16. Is this the point they finally come off the board?
Albany?
Well,
with Albany, yeah.
It's a possibility for sure. I think that when it comes to Jonas, he is certainly a player that knows how to win. And with the fact that Albany has made to the FBA Finals this year. Just having that kind of that championship is pretty good to of a reason to try and pick a player like.
You're cutting out again, Marcus.
Oh, jeez.
Well, see,
Goodness gracious.
the thing is, they have depth at forward. If you don't have, I mean, obviously Terry O'Toole, right? But then you get into players like Tapisa. You have, you're still holding on to Takeru Ishijama on the roster. They have enough forward depth right now that I'm not seriously concerned that they would need to be drafting Acosta here for the Alphas. I had them down as another team. Sorry, excuse me. That would need a point guard to back up Jonah Vestenhout.
Who just came off the board, so.
Well,
one of the best ones. I mean, you could still do Davenport, I guess. Either Davenport.
So, Albany is kind of in a strange situation here. They've got some contracts they need to resolve. Obviously, they've had recent retirements. They're going to need to think seriously about what they foresee their starting lineup being this season, and to find a player on this board that matches what they don't have the solid answer for yet.
Yeah, and you have to consider the fact that we have seen Narcissa retire. You almost feel like they have to go guard in some way, but the problem is the guards that are on the board are not jumping out as much. So do they go with Acosta and move Terry to shooting guard? But with his size, it may be a bit of a disadvantage to face off against a speedy shooting guard. I mean, obviously they still have Valerio on the board, and then you can start looking down further into the on the cusp players. But I feel like at 16, it makes sense for Acosta to finally come off the board. He's essentially being handed to a team that was one game away from winning the FBA championship.
Right.
So you almost feel like they have to take him here.
But is the forward position, the reason why they didn't? No, that's always going to be on the mindset of not only Alpha fans, but the organization as a whole. Mm-hmm. Do you signal that as being the reason why things didn't go the way they had planned with your next pick in the following year's draft? I don't know.
We still have the options of free agency as well, because there's still a handful of guard players that are very well established and can easily fill in that role and are very well seasoned as well, compared to these players that are in this position that this late in the draft. So it's certainly a pretty interesting situation for Albany. I think for me, you do want someone who already has that winning mindset, and certainly Jonas has that opportunity to do that.
Yep, and I think the commissioner is ready to let us know what the selection is here at 16.
For the number 16 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Albany Alphas have selected Lorenz Valero, a swing fur from Black Tundra University. Congratulations to you, Lorenz, on being the number 16 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Winnipeg Voyagers have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, besides the commissioner trying to end the draft early here tonight, we have the swing fur coming off the board.
Right. And I really regret not having said that name.
Yeah, that was your last opportunity. That's 3 strikes. You are out.
You are out. Well, thanks again for helping us here, Matt. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Is it? You're kicking me out right now.
No, you said you had to leave anyways.
You have things going after the 16th pick. Don't throw this on us, okay?
No, Marcus.
We're actually trying to throw
okay.
Marcus, pick him up, throw him out. He's gone. Bye.
We'll hug it out later. Bye.
Bye. See you later. Goodness gracious.
Well, Marcus, your thoughts on that pick before we dive into the FBA champions and what they'll be picking here at 17.
It's certainly not a bad choice, as we've alluded to. Cassius is, officially retired from the FBA, so trying to fill in that slot should be the big priority here. And even though that there are still plenty of players that are available in the free agency that could be looked at, because there really isn't too many contracts that have been dished out there from any of the positions. It's still good to go ahead and go for this safety pick, and you do have a little bit of best of both worlds for picking up a swing for as well.
Yeah, and I mean, interesting selection at 6'10". He definitely very tall for the position, but we'll need to see how he does endurance-wise matched up against other furs in the FBA. But diving on over to the defending FBA champions, the Winnipeg Voyagers, what do they go here? Because they have a bit of a surprise need at center.
They do. And it's a really very tough position considering the fact that all of the centers in the top 24 are now on their respective teams that they were drafted by. Um, do they want to go ahead and risk it for the biscuit and go for the on the cusp player in Tafer Hendricks? It could be a possibility. But again, as I alluded to for the last pick, Jonas has an opportunity to get picked by the current FBA championships, which honestly I would not complain at all if I were him. I mean, sure, it sucks to fall down into this spot in the first place, but having to be a reliable asset for an already championed team is really a great spot to be in, because like it gives you a chance to really develop as well as a player to possibly go ahead and go for a big chat once you are heading into free agency for the first time.
Yeah, and honestly, with Winnipeg, they have 3 open spots. You have the point guard, Eric Baltave, you expect them to bring back. Yves Carvenu, you expect them to bring back. Uh, the center position is the one position that they should be drafting at, and I certainly feel like they probably feel a little bit robbed here with having all the centers off the board. Now, they probably were expecting that. At 17, the lowest rated top 24 player was at 17. They probably have a plan in case this does not go well. You look at Tafer Hendricks, uh, but at the same time, you almost go, okay, well, might as well just go free agency and see if you can't pick anyone up from free agency that might be chasing a ring,
Mm-hmm.
and just go for depth here, which I would say is Acosta. The 5th overall player falling to 17 is a good addition of talent that can come off the bench and learn. And like you said, they're going to be here for 2 years. If they can't carve out a spot for themselves in the starting lineup, they have a great opportunity to go into free agency then after developing their skills behind potentially, if Carbonu comes back, one of the best small forwards in the league.
Yep, and that's something that I think is a great setup for all the teams involved, because you're going to get a reliable player coming off the bench in Jonas, while also being able to be a little bit a part of the Carbon learning tree, as Yves is, he's been here for a very long time. I'm sure he's more than happy to be a mentor for some of these young players.
Well, you also have to wonder with Narcissa retiring, how much longer does Eves want to play? Is Narcissa no longer being in the league going to make him want to consider retirement sooner, or is the fact that she's no longer in the league and she'll be able to be seeing more often make them realize that he can stick around for a little while longer and go for another ring? It's an interesting dynamic with players that are in relationships. They have very limited time they can see each other during the year.
Yeah, and it's certainly an interesting discussion. I'm sure that Narcissa will take all the time, take any chance that she can get to see her husband play. Maybe wearing some Winnipeg colors on her own during a few games. But yeah, I
That
think
might be a bit of a
overall,
betrayal. It's a little too soon for that.
a little too soon, maybe, but at least being there front court to root her husband on is probably a good, interesting situation here. But getting back into the draft itself, certainly I think Jonas is a good possibility here because of the fact that like there aren't really a lot of centers, well, really in general,
Five.
let alone just being in let alone just trying to be within on the cusp as well. So if they want to go for Tafer and see how well he phrased, because that's a big ask, especially for a player that is not considered to be a top 24 player. But at the same time, it's
This is when you see reaches into the cusp
yeah,
in
you're gonna
non-top
have to.
24. But the commissioner is ready to tell us who they've selected here.
For the number 17 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Winnipeg Voyagers have selected Jonas Acosta, a small forward from Rosario, Argentina. Congratulations to you, Jonas, on being the number 17 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return to the next pick when the Montana Howlers have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, we can finally stop speculating when the number 5 rated player will come off the board. He is going to the defending champions.
And as I said before, it's a great position to be in, especially for a player who's known to be a part of a winning culture from the get go, anyways. So, it's certainly a great thing for him to be able to have that opportunity to continue, possibly hoping to aim for Winnipeg to be a dynasty. Who knows?
Yeah, and it is going to be interesting to see how he develops behind, I'm assuming, Carbonu returning. But not a lot we can talk about with Winnipeg, given the fact that, again, they just won the championship. All eyes are going to be on them going the next year. But let's look at Montana, another team that's going to be dealing with some, I don't want to say surprises, but unexpected offseason changes as we saw two players initiate a renegotiation, one of which retiring after. So we have a lot of openings for this team. And unfortunately, the draft pick they are at, the level of talent here is questionable if immediate starter.
Yeah. I think at this point, the biggest eyes right now will most likely have to be around in the guard position because Cresta still can return, but I can't imagine that she'll be like as expensive as she was in her prior contract. But it really just depends on how much Montana is willing to give up for her in particular, because that's who I have my eyes on right now when it comes to what they need to do for free agency, especially if they want to try and bring back St. Croix, which I don't know if they have given an offer to her yet.
They
Yeah, she
have.
has. They have. 2 years,
They're
30
also
million.
pursuing Anari, a bit of a surprise, but kind of trying to replace that rising retirement. So I would agree. I would agree. I'm leaning point guard here, but the question is which point guard that's still on the board.
That is a pretty good question. I mean, Maria Davenport is known to be a pretty solid passer. Yes, um, I think that like she isn't necessarily the most offensive savvy outside of being that reliable 3 pointer. That's kind of expected for a lot of guards in the league right now. But when it comes to like a pure passer sense, Maria certainly could be the best option. And plus, she is she's the second highest outside of Rendall. And
Yeah, and I mean Rendell would not be a bad selection here in terms of just depth as well. He's a bit of a more scoring focused swing, which could be
mhm.
what they're looking for as a bit of depth slash insurance should Anari not leave Arizona. And that might be a bit of a safer pick in regards to looking for worst case scenarios. What happens if they swing and miss on Inari?
Yeah, but if they do decide to go that route, then they're gonna have to probably have to rely on see how much Cresta is willing to stay, because I imagine that they wanted to see get a pay cut.
Even if they
Um,
want to keep her, I mean, it's a question of whether or not she'll even re-sign a contract.
mhm. It's certainly an interesting situation. I think overall, I think guard is the best position, whether it is Rindal, whether it is Davenport, or they could possibly go ahead. Well, either of the Davenports really, because Natalie is also still available too.
Yes, like I said, either Davenport would be a understandable. One of them is more of a scoring focused than the other, but I do see the commissioner heading to the stage, ready to announce the 18th pick.
For the 18th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Montana Howlers have selected Mads Rendal, a swing fur from Hamar, Norway. Congratulations to you, Mads, on being the number 18 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Plymouth Taproots have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well. Mads does come off the board. We have yet to see a reach into the cusp here by the 18th pick. This might be a record going on. We might have the first ever 24 for 24 draft if the next 7 picks, go, no, 6 picks, I'm right, go the way of rankings.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty good possibility here. I mean, even as crazy as the first has been, there hasn't been one that had an initial shock, really. But looking into what Montana has, it makes sense that they wanted to go for I believe it was Mads, right? Mads Rendal.
Yeah, Madrindal.
Yeah, so going for Mads, it's not really a terrible choice, for sure. Being able to go for a very offensive minded player, especially in the mid range. And it's very athletic too.
Yep, and like I said, not again, kind of looking for depth. If there was a point guard, if one of the guards like Zuri or even Kincaid had fallen this far, they would have been a very obvious selection for Montana, but they just came off the board not too long ago. And again, I'm a little surprised we haven't seen teams try and move up to pick up some of these players, uh, especially after the rush of centers we saw at the beginning. Uh, but they've held their hands pretty well here.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly one of those where I think some teams do recognize that like there's plenty of fish in the sea in free agency. Sure, it's going to be more expensive, but there are plenty of guys out there that certainly takes the cake.
Yep. And we'll move on over to Plymouth. A bit of a question marks with a lot of players heading to free agency. I would honestly say center here with Jake
I mean,
Turner's free agency going up.
yeah, it's certainly a situation where it's kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. If you go for center, because he's gonna be like Jake Turner's costs a lot of money, and it's
Yeah,
kind of one of those situations, especially with the fact that Seattle is, sniffing their way, wanting back, wanting him back. They're gonna have to probably look at some possibilities of really kind of giving the backup here.
yeah, and there's just so many questions left on the board, and I could see them going for Tafer Hendricks here, just thinking about long term. Is Jake Turner gonna stick around if Kenny DeMarcus leaves, which is another player we have not really heard many offers for yet in discussion. It's gonna be difficult for the Plymouth Taproots to remain competitive if they cannot keep their star players around. But at the same time, those star players are going to cost arms and legs to keep.
Yeah, I mean they're at a point. They're at a point where they have to pretty much have to pick and choose which player they really want to have. In this case, especially when it comes to the case of Kenny DeMarcus as well. Now, Kenny hasn't been offered anything as of yet, from what I'm aware of, but um, certainly when they do offer that, um, it's going to be a pretty hefty price. I mean, it sure might be a little bit of a downturn compared to what he usually got, which I believe was about 11 million last year. But it's still going to be a starter range in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they do. And I believe the pick is in. So we'll jump on down to the stage.
For the 19th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Plymouth Tappers have selected Romeo Laterel, a power forward from Green Ravine University. Congratulations to you, Romeo, on being the 19th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Alaska Arctics have once again confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they gone big for power forward, in fact.
Yep, not necessarily the big that we expected, but it's still a big nonetheless.
Yeah, and the first non-top 24 pick? No, 20th ranked overall. Okay, so we're still on track for the record to be broken.
Yes, we are still on track for that. We still got some players that are we this could be the first time in a long time that all top 24 players are going to be picked in the first round, which is which some people be like, how is that not common? But it's like, well, some teams have more interest on certain players than others, and I think a lot of people recognize that like sometimes some of these on the cusp players can be very interesting if you actually get a chance to look deep into them. I mean, they're on the cusp for a reason, and they could potentially really make some noise. We've seen players that get picked in the second round as well make noise too.
Yeah, and I was gonna say we were on track for the 24 for 24, but then I remembered Alaska is on the clock.
True, you're right. Alaska could easily throw everything in a loop again because they've done it twice so far in this draft. They can do it again for sure.
Yeah, well, with their third pick, okay, we look back at what they've selected so far, and we can maybe do some process of elimination on what they should take here. Uh, they took obviously a shooting guard at 8. They took a center at 1. So that leaves point guard, small forward, and power forward.
Yeah. Um. Well, there is the possibility that they could easily go for a forward here. Drew Stemley is an option as well. I mean, they could go Maria Davenport with the fact that they have went guard in the draft. Could be unlikely.
Yeah, I mean Drew Steinley, another cattle player, along with Bria Kincaid in this draft. I, God, what are you gonna do, Alaska? What are you gonna do? They would probably lean away from point guard, I think, with Alessandro Serra under contract
Hmm.
for another 2 years, unless they're looking for pure depth. Which at that point, I could definitely see a Davenport or either Davenport being picked up. If they want to go crazy, they'd pick up, Marchese, the 5 foot player, to, you know, really put some challenges in.
Oh yeah, that'll certainly uh has some eyes on certain people on certain players as well. But in this scenario, I think they're probably gonna go for. They could go Aridi being a swing for really kind of be that possible development. But looking at the probably has two. Valerio possibility, and of course, as you alluded to with Blaze. Wait, it was Blaze was the one you mentioned, but Jonah Blaze is also is also a player that you see as a possibility as well.
Yeah, and honestly, this might be the time they start reaching into, like you said, the cusp. I could see Valerio going here for sure. Maybe they take Hendrix just to, make me want to throw away the rest of my papers that survived the first explosion. We are 5 picks away. Can we make it 5 picks without me breaking out into tears?
I doubt it.
That's so mean of you, Marcus.
I mean, come on now. You've already like blew up and like flipped papers on here. But I'm not. I wouldn't.
Yeah, and honestly, Alaska has a lot of options, and I feel like we're at that point now where, and because there's no high top 24 left, with Mads finally coming off the board, I don't blame any team for starting to go into that second round rankings and on the cusp rankings to start making their selections, because really now at this point it's about who they think in a year or two will be the best player available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And certainly for what's interesting about this for the rest of this really is that majority of the picks that were traded, and, and of course with Alaska as well with Lorraine picking here, and of course, well, picking two of the
Yeah, Lorraine will have 2 of the next
last
3
final
picks
picks,
after this, so
and Las Vegas has also got a pick as well. So it certainly kind of gives you a clue as to how a lot of the last few picks. They're not like as valuable, but at the same time, they're still pretty good to have. Um, what Alaska, Lorraine, Las Vegas will do in traded back to get these picks.
yep. And speaking of, the commissioner is ready to take the stage.
For the number 20 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, Glasgow Arctics have selected Bruno Valero, a forward from Vanderbilt University. Congratulations to you, Bruno, on being the 2022 number 20 draft pick. I will return for the next pick when the Lorraine Firestorm have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, the brother goes off the board.
Yeah, for sure. And I gotta say, I don't think it's like too much of a surprise.
Yeah, again, I mean, they were looking, if they already picked a center, they already picked a guard, they had to pick a forward, I guess, was the most obvious choice. And we'll actually get to hear from the Alaska GM shortly, hopefully, and we can maybe pick Rocky's brain a little bit. Rocky, thank you for joining us. Uh, Quite a bit of an interesting first round for the Arctics here tonight.
Thank you. Yes, it is sensational to be here, and yeah, I am just topped up on caffeine. It's been a very exciting night for the team. Very exciting night for Alaska.
I have to
Yeah,
say that you definitely got us talking very early with that first overall pick selection. Could you maybe give us a little insight of what made you pick Devin Dukes over all the other centers in this top 24?
Yeah, absolutely. We knew it would be a big surprise, but I feel like I had a little bit of an edge as a former player because we really, I got to look behind the numbers and I looked at who was the most mature among the centers because we knew we wanted a center. And it was Devin Dukes who put in the initiative to like really lead his team in the combine, to put in some amazingly mature and responsible uh, answers in his interview. And we just felt like he was someone who, well, we had multiple talented options to pick. It just had to come down to who we thought we could fit in as part of a dynasty, because we're trying to build a dynasty here in Anchorage.
That's a very fair takeaway. You have to consider the chemistry of the team, especially one like yours, which is undergoing a bit of a retooling and rebuilding. And we'll definitely like to hear your thoughts on the next couple picks before we head off, unless you need to get off sooner for any kind of more shenanigans. If you're trying to, I don't know, maybe get a fourth first round selection, which God help us all if you do.
Gosh, it's been like being a kitten in a candy store, honestly, at this point. So most of the work is done for me today, and I can't hit those casinos and can't do Vegas until that second round's over with. But I can stick around for a little bit if you'd like.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So
of course, always.
Lorraine is on the board now, and there's a lot of questions, I guess, with them. They have Callum Williamson, the player they traded for last offseason, going into free agency. Do they foresee being able to keep him around, especially with, I believe, Alaska has shown some interest in Williamson and Williams. So does Lorraine here, take a safety pick?
It's certainly a possibility for them to do that, as we've alluded to. I mean, with this late pick, I don't think a lot of players feel some kind of way if you decide to go that route. Um, but in any of those cases, um, two bats really kind of have that depth overall when it comes to that situation, and really having more bodies at the point is probably going to be for the better.
Yeah, your thoughts, Rocky, on uh, a team that is trying to possibly bring back a player. How much of as a player's standpoint, if you're a free agent and you see your team draft a player for the position that you play, do you take that as an insult, or do you see it as a smart business move?
Well, you have to just take it as a professional, like it's a business and this kind of thing happens. And, I'm tentative to say anything because I know that I don't want to step on any clause or anything, but I think maybe they should look to make some insurance there, because Kitty's got claws, and we've been very open about our interest in Callum.
Yeah, I'm sure. And these and in this situation, I'm sure that like Rain, they don't have too much. They have a decent amount of cap, but not enough to dive into a bidding war per se. Is really just seeing if Callum's experience in Lorraine was enough to keep him around.
Yep.
Far be it for me
Really.
to talk about how exciting Lorraine must be, but we've got the Northern Lights here. It's beautiful.
Uh, yeah, and I think the commissioner is ready to take the stage for the first of what will be two Lorraine picks here in the first round.
For the 21st pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, the Lorraine Firestorm have selected Jonah Blaze, a swing fur from Muddy Waters High School. Congratulations to you, Jonah, on being the number 21st pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when Las Vegas has confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they went, I feel like, more of a depth pick here with a swing fur, considering they already have, in my opinion, their starter for small forward and shooting guard with their pickup last year. I have to wonder if they feel pretty confident in their point guard position, being able to retain Callum.
Yeah. Well, there's also the possibility that they could select it on the 23rd pick, considering that there's still quite a few guards here available at the end of the draft, with Maria Davenport, Natalie Davenport, and Agapito. Oh my gosh, these.
Oh gosh, they're hard to
Oh,
pronounce.
but Marchesi as well. I mean, those available for them to really pick. And if Las Vegas decides to go for it, they still have one of those two, really one of those three, because Riddy's also a switch, so geared towards the shooting guard position. So there's
And
plenty of options here.
and if I could just I've thrown a little bit of shade at Lorraine, but I got to say credit where it's due. Um, we it was a coin toss between Bruno and Jonah. So uh, oh, and I think she Jonah might be the sleeper of the draft.
Yeah, and teams at this point are looking not at immediate contributions. Usually, they're looking at future prospects. These are the players that they are looking to invest those 2 years of the contract in to develop them to become starters in that time. And definitely going to be an interesting situation to see, especially someone coming out of high school, very young, very raw talent, and they have a very difficult to gauge ceiling of potential here.
Got to play
Well,
the long game.
yeah. Well, now we look at Vegas, a team that we saw Conley announce would not be returning to. So you have to imagine here that they are
Ooh.
looking at Big
Ooh.
Fur.
Yeah, either it's gonna be tough in the draft right now, considering that the only big furs that are available at this moment are on the cusp or really outside of the top 24. So I mean, this, like I said before, like there are some good players there, especially when you look at somebody on the cusp. But on the cusp, there's only one, and that's Hendricks. But there's also the possibility of them going into the free agency, which I believe they have dipped their paws in as well, offering a couple of big contracts to a couple of big
Only
furs.
one. We've really only heard them talking to Tyreek Murphy to fill that shooting guard role. That's kind of come open with uh, the renegotiation of Roger Amechi. So this is a team with a lot of questions still of, what are they going to do at shooting guard and when are they going to do at power forward? You bring up Hendricks, we could see them potentially slide the Wolf uh, Nikolai down to power forward and bring in Hendricks, who's a bit more of a traditional center,
Mm-hmm.
but he's very young as well, at only 19. So it's a question of uh, what do you do there? And Rocky, can we get your thoughts on a team's decision to move away from a historic player like Ubechi? I mean, obviously, you taking over Alaska, he has some history there. What's that kind of what's the difficulty of the history of the player versus what they can do right now?
Well, honestly, you're trying to put forward the best team that you can play right now. I mean, the past is great, but you don't want to rest on your laurels. So you really want to look at someone who's going to step up and take a leadership role because that's the place that they're going to be taking on, and that takes on a lot of maturity and a lot of you got to be able to really play the long game. It's a developmental process, so the whole team needs to put in the legwork and to really make them feel like they're part of the team and push them up to the next level.
And with the last minute here on the clock, looking at the board, I am going to say Hendricks. I feel like there's been too many centers coming off the board, and there's not a lot of big furs that make me jump out of my chair right now, uh, in a good way, not a bad way, not like earlier. Uh,
Yeah.
so I feel like they kind of have to go Hendricks here. Maybe they even go one of the other centers in the board, like a Daniel Osgood who's 7'6", even more of a traditional center that you would see sliding Nikolai over. Uh, but I just don't see other than going for a shooting guard maybe just as a backup in case they can't pick up Tyreek.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I feel like that when it comes to where Las Vegas is at this moment, really looking at the depth chart, a lot of theirs is pretty much set. And outside, of course, shooting guard and power forward, um, if they want to go ahead and bring in Mary back into the fray, which it seems to really be indicating the case and why they decide not to bring Conley back to Las Vegas. I think the big thing really here is to go, as you said, Hendricks, pretty much going for that classic center that can be very reliable, but of course we'll have to have some growing pains,
Yeah.
Oh, and by the
considering
way,
how
I'm
young
getting
he
called
is.
away by my draft team, so it's a
Oh no.
thank you so much. It's been a
No.
pleasure to be
Don't
here, you
do it.
guys.
Don't do it.
I gotta.
Okay.
It's
Ah.
busy,
Well,
but
Vegas.
thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you again, Rocky, for coming in. I see the commissioner heading to the stage. Speaking of,
For the 22nd pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Las Vegas Wildcards have selected Helena Riti, a swing fur from Philadelphia Institute of Science and Technology. Congratulations to you, Helen, on being the 22 pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Lorraine Firestorm have confirmed their next selection. Thank you.
well, they decided to
Okay.
go swing here with a bit more of a depth, which I guess makes sense if they're looking at that shooting guard, power, small forward role.
Yeah, and also could be a possibility to kind of fill in that bench spot for Romechi as well, since they decided to move on from him. Um, eh, I can't get mad at this one. I certainly think that like really any kind of depth is good depth. Um, in these type of scenarios, and I think it's possibly also just trying to kind of sweeten the deal with Tyreek, really just kind of pushing and saying that hey, we really want you on our team in Las Vegas, and we hope that you'll be able to bring him home.
Yeah. And assuming Alaska does not trade for this pick, Lorraine is on the clock once again. We just talked about them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what does Lorraine do here? They picked up Yona Blaze. So you have to wonder if they dip their paws back into on the cusp once again, but they have a number of top 24s available. Three of them, they could be a good pickup here uh, with some insurance looking at that shooting guard or point guard position.
Yeah, I think that at this point, out of the three players that are within the top 24 right now, considering they've just got Jonah, I don't expect them to really go for Stimley here. So possibly going for Natalie or Machesi would most likely be the options here. And I believe Agapito is probably the more reliable passer out of those two. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go for that one there.
Yeah, I mean, I Marchese being 5 foot, I have questions, and I feel like he's going to
Mhm.
fall to the second round because of that. There's going to be a lot of doubts placed on him as to whether or not he can play in this league at the level he needs to. And 3 million might be a little too much for a team to take that risk on. So I could definitely see him slipping into the second round. Either Natalie going here makes the most sense to me, but I'm not discounting Caroline Radley or Collins, the other on the cusp players that are able to fill that kind of safety uh, backup role in case they lose out on Callum. Now, obviously, there's still other point guards in the draft they could are free agency they can go for, which I mentioned earlier. Kenny DeMarcus, another player that no one has really showed much
Mm.
interest in. Veteran could be good for a team that misses out on their first target.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be interesting for Lorraine. Uh, and I'm sure that right now they really want to make sure that they bring in Callum since they did trade for him. They gave up assets for him in the beginning. So they don't want to lose him for free in this kind of regard. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just want to go ahead and really kind of emphasize that they really want to keep him, but not necessarily going for a point guard like player, but at the same time, it's good to go ahead and go for that depth because there's plenty of guards available, as we alluded to earlier when they first pick, and it would make the most sense to go ahead and have as much of strong depth as possible.
Yes, and they have a minute left on the clock to make this choice here, and we have 2 picks left here tonight before we wrap up round 1. And we're going to have a lot to reflect on going forward. Obviously, Alaska got things going with a very crazy pick, and it seemed like things were calming down until we started to see some reaches down with like Queens going after Clemens, Aurora Hopkins going to Tallahassee. We had Kenneth McField, the last center in the top 24, go by pick 11, which really limited, I feel like, a lot of these teams' plans that were later in the draft that were expecting at least one of them to still be available by pick 13, 14, because they really were not rated as high as previous years.
Yep, I think it really just kind of goes to show again that when a class is lacking a certain position at depth, teams kind of tend to go towards those players to just go ahead and pick them up now rather than later, and really kind of just leave the well high and dry. But compared to um, positions, more specifically guard positions, that get there's so many of them that come and go that you can't help but try and go ahead and pick up a player in that kind of instance.
Yeah, and oh my lord, just looking at the future going forward for this free agency with centers, how I don't want to say stressed because a lot of centers renegotiated their contracts, and here they're watching some of the teams that were most desperate for centers choose to go from the draft rather than make bids on them, and how much money could they potentially be missing out on because it turns out that this isn't a center hungry free agency because of just how many have hit free agency.
Yeah, it kind of just goes to show that it again kind of really makes you kind of wonder if a lot of the teams right now are not very comfortable trying to dish out so much money early on in free agency compared to how it was like in years past. Because heck, I remember when Jake Turner was around. I mean, sure, he's still getting offered a lot of money now, but back then, almost every team
30 million.
was given maxes.
Yeah.
Like just straight up maxes. So he just like, okay, you have 3 teams that like gave out max contracts. What's your preferred spot?
Yeah. Well, we're going to dive down to the stage as the penultimate pick is in of the first round.
For the 23rd pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, the Lorraine Firestorm have selected Maria Davenport, guard from Claiborne University. Congratulations to you, Maria, on being the 23rd pick of the 2022 FBA Draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Biloxi Voodoo have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
So they did make the decision to pick up a guard here. Not too surprising if they were going with a little bit of a safety pick.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, getting a safety pick in the second to the last pick overall is not a bad choice at all. Because I mean, if you as a player get a little butthurt for a team picking a player in the same position as you and pick at the second to the last pick of the first round draft, I have a lot of questions for you, and they're not very nice questions.
Oh, we gotta save those for after Marcus later.
Yes, of course, of course.
Uh, but with that, we do have the second to last pick come off the board. We have one more to go, and it will be interesting to see. Obviously, Claiborne University was Callum's alma mater as well, so there is some perhaps reunion benefits that come from selecting her here. But last pick of the first round belongs to the Biloxi Voodoo, a team that is going to be very different than last year after the renegotiation of Derek Kim and Michael River, assuming they do not try to bring back River at a more competitive contract. This
It,
they can't really make a wrong choice here because they need some help everywhere.
yes, they do because outside of Andreas and Sterling, and Lowento's on his final year as we got to put a note onto that. Um, there's going to be a lot of questions as to what they need to do here because they don't have a lot of depth. Now with Sterling, he has been a very solid performer for Biloxi, but outside of the one championship that they've had um, last year, you kind of have to put into question of whether or not like going for that long term 20 million a year contract is going to bite them in the butt in this situation, especially with the fact they have another player that is above 10 mil in Andreas.
Well, not just that, but River wants Sterling money basically.
Exactly.
Which I mean, we've seen teams like Dakota try to swing that with 3 very large contracts, and it becomes a cap nightmare. Or actually, I get one curse word night, cap hell. That's my word for the night, and
Congrats.
it's very difficult. Obviously they have Reed Carter off the bench that they could potentially slide into the starting point guard spot, but you almost have to imagine here that uh, it's a curse of they had such success last year that they ended up with the last pick in the first round. So it's probably not going to be the same kind of show next year. They have to pick one of the guards, whether it's Marchese, Davenport, Collins, Radley, one of those players that we have identified as being some of the better players in the draft. If there's someone
Mhm.
in the non-top 24 that they've really fell in love with, they could definitely go with, but there's going to be some growing pains involved with honestly any of these players at this point, unless they find someone in free agency to be a veteran that they can learn under.
Yeah, for sure. I think that honestly, they probably will have to rely on not only picking a guard here, but also one in free agency that's probably like in a second tier type of situation. So that way that they can have someone to help aid them in sharing the load because that's going to be a very tall order being on a getting picked by one of the teams with the best record from last year and having to fill in a very giant hole in Derek Kim, especially. Um, and it can be the same. It can be said the same for someone who to replace the hooves of Michael River as well. So it's going to be a tough situation no matter what. If you are a part of that player, if you get picked for one of those slots, so it should be wise for Biloxi to try and see if they can get some two savvy veteran players that are a little bit of a journeyman, or could potentially be journeymen to possibly help these players out as they try to, get their paws wet a little bit on the court.
Yeah, and like I said, last pick of the draft, a lot of questions. Well, sorry, not last pick of the draft. That's tomorrow, Marcus. Got to be
Yes,
in
it
it
is.
tonight. Uh, the pick is in, though. We will head on down to the uh, stage as the commissioner is about to announce the selection.
For the 24th pick of the 2022 FBA Draft, Biloxi Voodoo have selected Natalie Davenport, a guard from Vancouver Interspecies University. Congratulations to Natalie on being number 24 in the 2022 FBA Draft. And with that pick, our first round will be concluded. Congratulations to all of the new draftees who have just been selected by our first 24 teams, and to the rest of the hopeful draftees, do not fret. There is still 24 more rounds to go. And plenty of teams looking for young talent such as yourselves. In the meantime, please enjoy the dinner which is being provided to all of you. For those of you who are joining us remotely, have a great evening. See everyone tomorrow. Thank you.
And just to clarify for the fans at home, there are not 24 more rounds to go. That is the UFFL. We only have 2 rounds here. Thankfully, there will not be over
Yes.
500 players picked this draft. So don't worry.
Yeah. I could never understand how those guys do it. I swear.
Yeah.
But in with that, the first round has been concluded. This time with back-to-back Davenports as Natalie gets picked up for the Voodoo.
No relation. The last one was a white lioness. This one is a white-tailed deer. Clearly not going to have any kind of comparison between the two.
I mean, they
Uh,
have like fur.
yes. I mean, we'll have to see how either of them develop, both of them being picked here by teams that, I mean, Lorraine did not have a fantastic finish of the season. They got these picks through trades. They traded back into the first round, but not very highly up. So it is going to be interesting to see how Davenport Natalie deals with the pressure of being selected by a team that has had consistent success but is looking at a difficult season going forward, and she might find herself
Yep.
thrust into the starting role earlier than expected.
Yeah, for sure. Considering the fact that like, unlike for a lot of the top teams within the FBA, the Voodoo has a lot of major holes to fill here, and with Natalie having to get picked in this one, she's gonna have to learn quick. It's not gonna be easy, especially in a especially with how the Voodoo has been seen throughout these past few years, but with the fact that Derek Kim is now gone and Michael River most likely going to be heading out as well, if they do not have the money for him, it's going to be a bit of a retooling situation here for the Voodoo, considering the fact that they still have a couple of players that are going to be here for the long haul and um, take a good percent of their cap space.
Yes, and any final thoughts, Marcus, before we close out for the night?
I think the big thing to come off from this is essentially, um, I'm happy that things went a little bit wild, especially in the early goings of this draft. So, this was very an exciting time for us here. Congrats to all the players who have been selected here in the first round. I'm very happy for each and every one of you. And for those who haven't been selected yet, don't fret. We still have 24 more slots to go as we go ahead and get things going tomorrow.
Yes, have a good night, everyone. I don't know if the commissioner wants to say anything else before heading out for the night. The commissioner out of Elephant, maybe.
Folks, thank you all for. Oh, I'm still on Echo, aren't I? Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Faded and Xenos for announcing for today, and to all of our guest commentators. We certainly appreciate all the hard work that everyone's put into these 2 nights of the draft, and we'll see everyone tomorrow for round 2, not rounds 2 through 24. Have a great night, everyone.